Hello everyone and welcome to Senior Susie Stamps. This is Julia and I have a fun project, actually 3 cards today that I thought I would show you. I've already done a lot of the background work just to keep the video a little shorter today, but I do have a fun flower punch idea that I wanted to show you, and I'll show you that at the end. I wanted to tell you how this whole process started, and I'm going through my colored cardstock and trying to get it reorganized a little bit better, and perhaps I'll do a video on that at some point in time. But I found these little scraps of this really nice linen textured paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and this is absolutely the last of it. And I happen to have run these 3 or 4 pieces through my embossing folder with a wood-like texture, so I thought, surely I can make a card out of one of those. And so we're going to work on that today. But just to let you know, I've been using some alcohol markers to do some coloring. And when you use alcohol markers to color, you need to make sure that you have a water-based ink. And these are some of the colors that I have used today for the cards. I've got Rich Cocoa, Gray Flannel, Tuxedo Black, Lucky Limeade, Baja Breeze, Marina Mist, and Garden Green, as well as Orchid Opulence. So these are some of my favorite color combinations. Now, Garden Green, there's some inks that I struggle with just a little bit, and Garden Green is one of them. Cherry Cobbler is another, and it's because they seem to bleed. They don't dry up quite as quickly as some of these other inks do. So when I stamp with these ink pads that I have struggled with, I try to stamp them like the day ahead of time and just let them completely dry up before I even go to fooling with them. Just a word to the wise on that. So let me show you here what I've done with that wood strip. And I colorized it a little bit, and let's just do one. And I usually start maybe with the gray flannel and just do an ink drag to raise the grain and to give it just a little base of color, additional color in that. And then I'll go back in with my brown and black also, because you want to develop layers of color on these. So that, and I'm not dragging all the way down with the brown necessarily, but you're just enriching the color so that it looks like some wood bark then. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to bring the black in and do the edges and the top and the lower part as well. And then I want to, I need a little bit down the middle on that one, I think. And then I want to add just a little bit of white into that, and I do that with my acrylic paint. And I'm going to put just a little drop on the smooth side of my my acrylic stamp block, and then get a kind of a coarse brush or a fan brush and just lightly kind of drag some white in there. You know, when you look at tree bark in nature, frequently it's got a lot of, what do they call it stuff? Brain fade, algae and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. Sometimes my brain just freezes. So I'm going to also go in a little bit with some green. And I have this fabulous metallic green. It's called Green Flash. And it looks just like green tree moss to me. But it also has just a tiny little bit of iridescence. And you see, you don't need much at all. This is a tiny little spot of paint. And then I'm just going to add a little bit in where maybe you might see a little bit of algae or moss growing on your tree there. It just adds a little more interest to it than just an ink drag does. And I'm going to go and wash this brush right away because acrylic paint is very hard to get out of once it gets dry. I'll be back. There we go. And I'm going to use my little water bottle just to add some water to this acrylic block to clean it off really quickly. And now we're all done. Yay. So if I feel like the green is a little bit bright on this, I'm going to go back in with my black ink and just tone it down some. There we go. There's your nice piece of wood. One thing about those kinds of pieces, when you do a lot of inking, you need to let them set and dry. Otherwise, they will get all over your fingers, and your fingers will transfer it to your card. Ask me how I know this. But you can see I got some there, but it's not coming off with my baby wipe, so it probably won't come off on my card. All right, let me get this straightened up a little bit, and we'll get started making some cards. I decided I would use up some of these scraps that we had left over from a video that I made earlier this, well, I guess it was last month now, but this is that green linen piece, and I have cut these down to the first layer. Well, I said that and I'll take it back. This black piece is a scrap, and it's actually not going to fit all the way on that card, so I'm going to have to trim that card base down some, which is fine. It's no big deal. And then I'm just going to front the card with the black. On this piece, you can see I have done some scoring at 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch all the way around. So it just adds a little bit of interest to this card. Let's get these glued down. And I'm using my Books by Hand PVA glue today. I've been making several cards lately, and I may need to fill my glue bottle up again pretty soon. But I think we've got enough to do cards for today. All right, and I'm just looking for an even border all the way around. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. I also have a black panel and a white panel for the inside of this card as well. One thing that I always try to do is orient my portrait cards with the fold to the top whenever I have them on my craft desk, and I orient my fold to the side to the left side. It's just a habit you ought to get into so that you don't glue your stuff down wrong. It happens, and then you have to start all over again by cutting your card apart, and it's frustrating when you get to that point and then you get glued up and realize that you have glued it on wrong. So that's the way I have resolved that here in the studio. I just make it a habit to put my card bases on the table the way they're supposed to be. There we go, and I'm going to trim this off with a pair of scissors. These card bases are some scraps. Well, they're not scraps, they were full sheets of paper, but it was lighter weight paper than what I like to usually use for card bases. And so to resolve that lightweight issue, I am going to double layer the top, and I'm going to double layer the inside. So let's get that done, because it really adds a lot to the structure of your card. And if you have lightweight card bases that maybe feel a little flimsy to you, this is a good way to use that paper up, and then maybe the next time you'll order a little heavier paper. This card does have some butterflies on it, and so I have put some butterflies on the inside as well. Doesn't take a lot of glue for your inside panel because there's not any stress on that inside panel. There we go. So now let's finish the outside here. I am going to glue this down, and I'm going to put some foam up underneath that piece, and I'm going to try to run this piece from the bottom to the top of the card and not trim it down so that it just sits on the top and takes up the entire card real estate. One thing I would like to do is to try to roll this edge back just a little bit, and I'm going to try to do that with my bone folder. There we go. Just easily putting a little roll in that tree bark so that it looks like it's kind of rolling back that way, like it would a tree. Because we're going to put some birds on the front of this card. There we are. I'm going to try to get it straight. Try is the operative word there. And I have gone ahead and colored these. I stamped them. Oh, let me tell you about the stamp sets that I used. I forgot. I'm sorry. These are the two that I pulled to use for today. This one is a stamp set from hot off the press, Paperwishes, called Mystic Garden. I don't know if it's still available or not. If it is, I'll leave a link down below. But it has a lot of interesting little stamps in it, and we've used a bunch of them here. Every garden grows a little magic. Enjoy the little things. Cultivate. This bird stamp you'll see today, these two flowers, the butterflies, and this is the one that we're working on right now. I also pulled this other set by Stampin Up called Peace Within. I don't know what year this was put out, but I really liked these sentiments. Every day holds a possibility of a miracle, and peace within makes beauty without. So one thing I do when I find sentiments like this in my collection that I don't already have in my notebook is to stamp some off, and then I'll cut these apart and put them in my sentiment notebook. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there is a great video on jump starting your cards, and I'll put links to those two below, because there's one for the front sentiment and one for the inside sentiment as well. So let's get back and get this one ready to roll out here. So I'm thinking I want to put peace within makes beauty without, and you'll notice that when I stamped this the first time it didn't work very well, so I just flipped it over and stamped it again. And I'm going to glue this onto this black panel just to make it kind of stand out a little bit. And I think this panel may be an exact fit to the card, but I'm going to leave a little edge here and we can trim that off. Remember now, we trimmed these this card down just a touch, so we may have to do just a little extra trim work on that. And what I want to do then is to add a little piece of foam to the sentiment so that it will stand up around this tree here. And then I'll have another little piece. Probably only need half a little piece on this end. I'm going to go ahead and put the sentiment on because the upper part can be placed then appropriately for the rest of the card. Looks like I got a little tiny bit of glue there. I believe that will come out with an eraser after a while when it dries up completely. If not, we'll be putting a butterfly right there. Okay, so I'm going to trim these off so that they're even with the edge of the card. There we are. And then these little panels that I colored with my alcohol markers on top of water-based ink, I will need to put a little piece of foam tape on that up the side as well, and then some glue, and I'm going to glue it down fairly heavily because of the grooves on that other panel. Now on this one, I want it to kind of go in the very center of the upper part of that card. And there we go. And then I have another little sentiment here that says, every garden grows a little magic. Yeah, I think I'm going to put that one up there. And then I have two little butterflies. And on these butterflies, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I put just a little bit of glue on top of the body of the butterfly. See how it shines? It adds just a little bit of extra something on that butterfly to do that. And I just thought it was fun. So I'm going to put this one up here. And I'm going to glue the sentiment for the top down flat onto the tree bark there at a bit of an angle. And then I'm going to try to erase this. And when I'm using erasers, I always try to get a white eraser to use for cards, because they don't tend to mark up your cards like a red eraser does. Nope, I still see a little spot, so that's where this little guy's going to go right here, and we won't worry about it anymore. And this card's basically finished then. So let's go on and start with card number 2 and see what it looks like. Card number 2 has birds on it as well, and those came out of that same stamp set. On this one I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and that's a pigment ink, and if you want to colorize that, that's where I go back in and use my ink colors that are water-based. So it's water-based and pigment, or water-based ink and alcohol marker. That way you don't get the bleed issue coming on. Now you'll notice this little funky corner here. Well, I stamped it onto a scrap, and that's what you get sometimes when you're using scraps, but we've got a workaround for that. This is the inside panel to that card, and I'm using an old blue paper here that I believe is called Dapper Denim, if I'm not mistaken. It's a fun little blue color. I kind of like it, actually. It's kind of a bluish grayish something. Well, I also found this embossed brick piece in my stash when I was going through the colored paper this week, and I thought, well, I'll just use that for a card. And so that's where we're going with this one. Now again, I've put this on my scoreboard and put the corner treatment on it, and I'm hoping that that shows up okay for you. I think it does. We're just going to glue these down and kind of build this card. And so this is the outside panel. And there we are. And this is the inside panel. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in, leaving plenty of room to write a little personalized note on your card. It's a nice way to finish the inside of a card, to bring some of the outside elements in that way. Now you'll notice that I've already gone ahead and foamed this little piece up, so I'm going to put that down. I couldn't quite figure out what to do with these bricks, and then I thought, well, you know, it's a scrap piece of paper, and so we'll just figure it out. And I did a little bit of ink drag with that same Dapper Denim blue color, and let's see what else I used. I think I used a little bit of gray flannel. That's a Memento color, and then I did some white acrylic paint again, and there it was, ready to roll out. There we are. Now I've gone ahead and put a little piece of foam tape on this. I don't know if you can see it or not, but on the little bird's eyes there was a little drop of glue. That just adds just a little bit more texture and interest to the card if you look at it up close and personal, which we of course hope. We hope that our people will look up close and personal at our cards, don't we? And I'm going to try to get this kind of sort of in the center of the card, and then with the same amount of border both ways here. There we go. That's right there. And then I've done some butterflies as well on this. And I did the same thing. I put just a little bit of glue on the body, and it gives it just a little bit of texture. Oh, I forgot to glue. Oh, here I am talking myself to death. I forgot to glue my paper down. That's just goofy. There we go. That's an easy fix. No worries. Okay. And I also have a little sentiment here, every day holds the possibility of a miracle. So I thought I would put that right down here and kind of offset it just a little bit as well. It is up on a piece of foam. I don't want to cover up the shadow of my bird's tails there, but I think that'll look just fine there now. And I'm going to use this butterfly to cover up that little spot right there, and I'll need a piece of foam up underneath of it. Just a little piece. So now let's see where that can go, where it'll cover it up. There we are. And I've drawn the wings back on this one to give it just a little bit of dimension. And I'm kind of softening up that corner up there on the card with it. Just that one little butterfly. And then I'm going to bring another one down here in this corner. And this card's finished. And there we go. Now, so that's 2 cards out of scraps. I like this card. It's a good card for a man or a woman. And you can do it for get well or anything really. That sentiment is very generic, and it works beautifully. Okay, let's go on card number 3. It has a little more razzmatazz in it. I think I made a few little flowers here, and I've colorized a couple of flowers. Now in that stamp set, this is one stamp and this is a different stamp, and you'll see it's kind of the mirror image of that one. So you can't really stick it up on top of it, but you can work with it. And you'll notice that I've put a little bit of glue on top of the center of these just to give them a little bit of shine. Now, when you do that, it does stay just a tiny bit tacky. And so what I do is I'll just tap the tacky off with my finger, and it works just fine. All right, now this card is a little bit more challenging just because I wanted to use up as much of this little bit of paper as I possibly could. So let's see what we've got here. This is the front, and this is the inside panel. Now, what I did for the inside panel was I used my punch and punched myself a stencil, and that's how I made a little stamp basically out of my punch. And that's one way that you can use your punches a little bit more if you choose to, and bring the front of your card to the inside. So this is the inside panel. Let's get it glued in. This is actually a really light gray. It's not white. And I'm going to put the flowers down by the signature side of this card. Just allows you to have a little more writing room on the inside of your card. If you put them up here, then you're likely just to have a little one sentence before you sign your card. But isn't that pretty? I like it on the gray with the white insert that way. And then on the outside, I have another orchid color with the score mark around the outside. This paper is actually an Astro Bright paper. I have no idea what the color is on it. It came in a mixed pack of paper, and I think it's a gorgeous color, but to me, for some reason, this color is just a challenge to use. I don't know why that is. Strong colors like this I find very challenging. I know that's kind of strange, but it is what it is. Okay, now let's set this aside for a minute and get to this panel, because I thought I would put a layer in this really pale lavender color, which is actually the outside part of these flowers. Well, it didn't create enough of a contrast with this gray. So now we're going to glue some lattice on in that orchid color, and I think it'll be fun. And I'm not really worried about exactly where these go. I think they're long enough. These were just the end of a scrap of paper, and I thought it would be fun to kind of use them. There. And then this little piece goes on the top of this section here, and I believe I'm going to put that up on a little bit of foam, and this will just make that lattice stand out just a little bit more. And that's all we're doing here. There. And now I've got these other little panels to go on. This one, you'll notice I also did the scoring on two sides, so it's going to go on here, and I think I'll just glue that down flat, and it's going to kind of go right in here. And then this little guy is going to come up on this corner here and kind of blend up into that, but I'm going to put him up on some foam. Now then, there's that. And my little sentiment says, cultivate, enjoy the little things. I'm going to put that up here and kind of hang it off a little bit. I think I'll put it up on a little piece of foam as well. Kind of a narrow little strip. That's all we'll need. Maybe I cut that small enough. You know, you never know. There we are. Take just a tiny bit off. There we are. And then I have some little flowers that I made that I thought might kind of round this card out pretty nicely. Not sure exactly where. I may have gotten too many made, which is okay. I can always use them later. I think we use the little ones instead of these bigger ones. Let's just kind of sprinkle them around and see where they need to go. When I made these little flowers, I did the little orchid paper punch first and the little green gem, and I thought, well, that kind of needs a little something extra on that. And so then I went back with my little stencil, and this is what I did. Let me show you before we finish this card. On the stencil, I just took it and inked with my little brush here. And because you're not going to get on a little chipboard stencil like this, you're not going to actually get all the way up to the outside corners of the image really well, unless you just get a much smaller brush than this and really work at it. Then when you do your punch, you're going to have a little white edge on your flower. Well, hang on. I didn't get that turned quite right for my punch. No worries. We just have to change the little spot. It goes in a little bit. And so there you can see you have a little white edge to your flower, which gives your little punched flower a little bit more interest. And here's another thing that you can do, and that is you can take your image and a pen and stick your pen kind of perpendicular to your paper and work your way around that little image as best you can. And if it doesn't exactly work, it's okay. It's not a big deal. And then you can use your punch to punch it out. And you have an image that has an outline. So you can outline your flowers as well with ink, or you can outline them in pen. I mean, you know, with your ink blending brush or with an ink pen, and it just adds a little bit more to your punched flowers that way. Let's get this card finished up. I think I'll use all 5 of these. just because I can. There's a little piece of foam between the layers on these two little punched images. So they've got some dimension on them as well. And this, I'm going to switch off to my art glitter glue because I want them to grab a little quicker. I put these in my hand and just shaped them up a little bit. I'm going to set this one down here, I think. There we go. And now they are. So there's our little card finished. I've got some little extra flowers that I can do something else with. And I'll put those in storage for another day. Let me show you these cards again. I think they turned out cute. And for being scrap cards, I don't think you can beat them. So here they are. All three of them. So I hope you enjoyed today, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great week, y'all. Bye.